They told us retirement was the reward, the moment when the world finally slows down and we get to breathe. But what if 2025 is the year it all unravels? Inflation's climbing higher than our savings. The cost of living? Unrecognizable. Food, rent, medicine, prices that feel like quiet violence. And the worst part, no one's really talking about it. What happens when your retirement plan, built over decades, is suddenly worth less than the paper it's printed on? What if the system designed to protect you was never built to survive this storm? One man, one decision, and the terrifying truth he uncovers about what's really coming. This isn't fearmongering. It's a wake-up call. Because the question isn't, can you afford to retire? It's, will there even be a world where retirement still means something? Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For most of us, retirement was once a promise. A quiet chapter, earned with decades of early mornings, long commutes, and careful savings. A life measured in paychecks and patience, with the golden years shimmering somewhere at the end. But in 2025, that image feels distant, outdated, maybe even delusional. The world we live in today is not the one many prepared for. Prices spike in weeks instead of years. Groceries now cost double what they did just a few seasons ago. Medication, essential for survival, is a luxury for too many. And the so-called safety nets? Fragile, underfunded, quietly cracking under the weight of a society aging faster than it can support. Technology has advanced, yes, but so has automation, replacing workers faster than we can retrain. The economy is global, volatile, and indifferent. Savings accounts earn less than the rate of inflation. Pensions vanish in corporate mergers. And every news cycle whispers about the next big collapse. We're told to diversify, to invest smarter, to work longer. But what if the system was never designed for this version of the future? The version where climate disasters wipe out entire towns, where food chains break overnight, where artificial intelligence is replacing not just jobs, but purpose? This isn't just a story about retirement. It's about what happens when the future arrives, and it doesn't look anything like the one we were sold. And for one man, standing on the edge of retirement, that realization will come too fast and hit far too hard. It didn't start with a crash, not with a war, not even a headline. It started quietly, a whisper beneath the surface of a booming stock market. A shift so gradual, most people never noticed. For decades, retirement was built on a system of trust in markets and governments and time itself. But that trust began to erode the moment inflation started outpacing wage growth. The moment pensions began disappearing not with outrage, but with paperwork. It began when the Social Security Trust Fund, once thought untouchable, was quietly projected to deplete by the mid-2030s. Economists warned. Reports were published. But they were buried beneath louder noise, politics, trends, distractions. And so the foundation weakened, piece by piece. Then came the pandemic. Global shutdowns. Supply chains shattered. Millions out of work. The system bent and never quite recovered. Governments printed money to stay afloat, trillions vanishing into the ether, leaving behind an invisible tax, inflation. And it didn't stop. It fed itself. A bag of groceries that cost $40 last year? Now it's $70. The average American retirement fund? Eroding faster than anyone wants to admit. And the man at the center of our story, he noticed. Not because someone told him, but because he felt it. Each trip to the pharmacy, each rising bill, each late-night calculation that didn't quite add up. He had done everything right. Saved, worked, believed. But something was off. And what he was about to uncover, in a series of seemingly ordinary decisions, would change everything he thought he knew about his future. And maybe yours, too. At first, he thought it was just a feeling, a subtle discomfort, the way his monthly expenses crept up, little by little. But then he started looking closer. A gallon of milk, now $5.89 in his city, up 37% in just 2 years. Electricity, up 22%. Prescription medication? His insurance suddenly didn't cover the brand he needed. Retirement, he realized, was no longer about freedom. It was about survival. And when he started researching, digging through government reports, economic forecasts, pension trends, the numbers made his stomach turn. The average American 401k? Just over $88,000. Sounds like a lot, until you realize it barely covers 3 years of modest living, especially with inflation eating away at every dollar. Social Security? Experts warn it will only be able to pay 77% of benefits by 2034 unless drastic action is taken. And even that projection assumes stability. But what if the next disruption is already on the horizon? Climate disasters are hitting more frequently, insurance premiums skyrocketing, housing markets teeter, and AI-driven layoffs are accelerating. He found a heat map of the U.S., showing counties with the highest elderly poverty risk. His state glowed bright red. And then came the final crack, a letter from his pension provider. New policy, reduced payouts, effective immediately. That night, he sat in silence, not afraid of death, but afraid of running out of time, of resources, of options. And as he stared at the numbers in front of him, one thought echoed louder than all the rest. What if we're the last generation that ever really retires? He thought he was prepared. He had a plan, a timeline, even a financial advisor. But what he didn't expect was the truth buried in a 76-page economic analysis from the Congressional Budget Office. It was a single paragraph, dry, technical, easy to skip. But it said this: long-term solvency of the Social Security system will require either a 25% benefit reduction, a 32% payroll tax increase, or both, unless birth rates, productivity, or immigration surge unexpectedly. He read it again and again. The system wasn't just strained, it was mathematically collapsing, and no one was coming to fix it. Not in time. Not for him. What shocked him most wasn't the numbers, it was the silence. No press conferences. No emergency plans. Just quiet decay. Then he dug deeper and found a 2022 study from the Federal Reserve. Retirement age may need to rise to 74 by 2045 to maintain solvency in current economic conditions. 74. A number that felt more like a sentence than a solution. Scientists and futurists had already coined a term for what's coming. Post-retirement reality, a future where aging populations no longer exit the workforce. Because they can't. Retirement, they argued, might have been a 20th century luxury, made possible by a brief window of post-war prosperity. And now, that window is closing. Fast. But here's what truly shook him. Some economists believe the system isn't broken, it's evolving. That this was always the direction it was headed. Quietly. Inevitably. Designed not to collapse, but to transform into something very different. The question is, into what? The more he searched, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about dollars and cents. It was about something much larger. Around the world, think tanks and universities were publishing research with eerie titles: The End of Retirement, Longevity Without Stability, Aging in the Age of Uncertainty. Scientists at MIT were developing predictive models showing that by 2040, over 60% of Americans over 65 would still be part of the labor force, not by choice, but by necessity. Advances in biotechnology were promising longer lives, but not necessarily healthier ones. People might live to 90, even 100, but with chronic illnesses, medication dependence, and skyrocketing care costs. Artificial intelligence was changing everything. Algorithms now advised investment firms faster than any human could. But they were also reshaping the job market, making older skill sets obsolete, pushing people out long before retirement age. And then, there was the tech no one talked about publicly. Quiet pilot programs in Northern Europe and parts of Asia, testing AI-managed pensions, where machine learning determines how long you're expected to live, how much care you'll need, and whether you're viable for long-term financial support. The math is cold, efficient, inhuman, and yet, governments were listening. For the man at the center of our story, this wasn't just theory anymore. It was a mirror showing a future where longevity was not a gift, but a burden. A future where retirement wasn't delayed, it was redesigned. The scariest part? These changes weren't in some distant timeline. They were already here. Quiet. Unstoppable. And no one had asked the people living it if they agreed. Some call it evolution. Others, betrayal. As he dug deeper, the man began to see the fracture lines forming between two radically different visions of the future. One camp, economists, futurists, tech elites, argued that retirement, as we knew it, was an outdated concept. They claimed people were living too long, costing too much, and contributing too little. To them, the solution was clear: work longer, adapt faster, trust the system. Let AI optimize everything from investments to life expectancy. They called it progress. But then, there was the other side. A growing, quiet resistance of voices, sociologists, ethicists, even former financial insiders, who whispered a darker theory. That the collapse wasn't an accident, it was a restructuring. That the idea of earned rest had been deliberately phased out in favor of endless productivity. That instead of fixing the system had decided to replace the people. He read leaked memos, buried reports, transcripts from economic summits. Words like post-employment society, automated dependency management, and soft exits chilled him. The truth was blurred, too complex to hold, too dangerous to ignore. And somewhere in that chaos, one question kept rising. What if we were never meant to retire in this version of the world? What if the promise was never real, just a pacifier for generations bred to build someone else's future? The man stared into the screen. So many versions of the truth, all conflicting, all terrifying. And yet the silence outside his window remained the same. Calm, controlled, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The shift wasn't loud. It didn't come with protests in the streets or breaking news alerts. It came in policy updates, quiet new laws, terms and conditions rewritten overnight. In some cities, retirement age was now flexible, tied to personal productivity scores managed by AI-driven systems. In others, state benefits required annual biometric assessments to justify continued support. He watched his friends, people who'd already retired, were called back into the workforce. Not forced, but gently nudged. Their benefits cut. Their savings drained. Choice became illusion. And around the world, similar patterns emerged. Countries once proud of their social programs began privatizing pension systems. Insurance premiums tripled. Pharmaceutical companies tied coverage to economic viability. For the first time in history, millions of older adults were classified as economically obsolete. And while all this unfolded, the market soared. AI investment tools outperformed human-managed funds. Automated industries boomed. A new class of workers emerged, optimized, code-literate, young, efficient, silent. The older generation, once seen as the keepers of wisdom, were now data points, aging variables in a system that had evolved beyond them. Some called it the dawn of a new age, a human-machine balance. But he saw something else, a slow erasure, a civilization rewriting its values in the name of progress. The final betrayal wasn't the collapse of retirement. It was the quiet decision that some lives were no longer useful, and the world accepted it. No parades, no collapse, just a long, cold silence where rest had no place. He sat by the window, the same one he used to imagine his retirement through: warm mornings, slow coffee, quiet days. Now, the view hadn't changed, but everything else had. The world he trusted, the system he built his life around, had revealed its true face, a machine that only moved forward, no matter who it left behind. But here's the thing. The future was never just happening to us. It was being designed by people, by policies, by the silent acceptance of every unchecked change. The question wasn't what went wrong. It was, when did we stop asking who we were becoming? He realized something, then painfully simple. Retirement was never about money. It was about dignity, about being allowed to rest without shame. And if that was being taken, then maybe it was time to choose, to resist, not through riots, but through awareness, through conversation, through refusal to pretend everything's fine. The choice is still here for now. Adapt or vanish. Speak or stay silent. Demand humanity or be streamlined out of it. Because what comes next isn't just economic or technological. It's deeply, undeniably human. And for him, and maybe for all of us, the question became clear. Will we evolve with soul or survive without one? Do you remember the image we started with? Retirement as peace, as reward, as a final breath after a life well lived? Look at it again, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Because if you're watching this thinking, that could never happen to me, you're already closer to it than you think. This story isn't science fiction. It's today. It's the silent deductions on your paycheck, the rising cost of your prescriptions, the voice in your head when you lie awake at night and wonder, will it be enough? And here's what scares me most. We didn't lose the system overnight. We watched it fade. Slowly. Silently. We trusted someone else would notice. Someone else would fix it. But now, maybe for the first time, It's personal. You, me, all of us, we're the first generation that may live long enough to outlive the promise. So let me ask you something, really ask you. If retirement disappeared tomorrow, what would you do? Who would you be? And do you still believe you're safe? Let's not pretend this is just another video. It's a warning, a window, maybe even a wake-up call. So if this hit you somewhere deep, not just in the head, but in the gut, then tell me. Tell us. Have you seen the signs? Do you still believe in the promise? Or are you ready to see what's really coming? Drop your story in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and most of all, stay awake. Because this isn't the end. It might just be the beginning.